Hi, my name is Brandie Paterakis, and I'm the owner of Blue Bee Counseling Services. I'm a mother and wife who is passionate about life and has found joy in helping others improve their mental health. The goal of this podcast is not only to provide enriching entertainment, but to help others in their pathway to have a more fulfilling life. This in no way is a replacement for therapy. Follow us on this journey of mental health awareness. Blue Bee Counseling Services now presents this podcast, Therapist Table Talk. Welcome to Therapist Table Talk. My name is Brandie Paterakis. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I also own Blue Bee Counseling Services here in South Jordan, Utah. I'm so excited because today I have a couple of friends here with me. So Celeste, tell us about you.
Yeah, my name is Celeste Jones. I am also a licensed clinical social worker. Brandie and I got our licenses right around the same time. And I work in young adult treatment, sort of a transitional living, so I get a lot of young adults coming out of more intensive residential, wilderness type therapies.
That's awesome. I actually know Celeste. I'd like to say that she kind of grew up by me. Yes. She was my backdoor neighbor while I was raising all my little kids, yes. Which is awesome. And would you like to tell them, you were also my children's babysitter?
Yes, I was. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting here with Logan, who helps with all the recordings, and she was just telling some great stories about my babysitting of them, which... Most of which I don't have recollection of, but it sounds like it was an adventure.
It might have been trauma. We might have to do trauma work after this. Oh, that's so funny. So I'm super excited to have her here with us today. A friend, someone that we kind of grew up together, and having this opportunity to be here and to help us with all of your fun experiences of working with youth. So that's great. So as I fumble through my words. Hi. This is also my friend. This is Rachel. Rachel, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Rachel Marie. I'm currently working on releasing a memoir of my life story that I've been working on for several years now. I also run a nonprofit organization, Shine SLC, which is an outreach organization. We reach out to at-risk youth who are suffering with homelessness, poverty, hunger, domestic violence, and other challenges. So we're working to provide them with services. And I also had a great start working in mental health by helping pregnant women who suffer with all different types of challenges related to pregnancy. I worked as a labor and delivery doula and a postpartum doula for over 15 years. So I love mental health. I'm so excited for us to get to visit today about the benefits of therapy. So
yes, this is awesome. We are super excited. Thank you for both being here today. And you can see the strategy in having both of you here today.
It's kind of genius. I'm really excited about this.
Balances out, yes.
It does balance it out, which is really fun. And I'll just like to add in my plug that I love working with at-risk teens. And so, therefore, I'm actually consider myself one of those gold special therapists who actually works with teens and they actually like me. So, I mean, whatever.
Yes, yeah.
Sometimes. My own teens would probably vary on that one. They'd be like, Mom, no.
Mine too.
No. Well, the reason why we have you here is because Rachel Marie has this amazing story, and the story is quite phenomenal. In fact, it's so phenomenal that she is writing her own memoir about it, and we're talking about it a little bit today. And so this is a little bit different than what we usually do here on Therapist Table Talk. Usually we have 3 therapists or people in the mental health industry that kind of discusses and talks about certain topics. And today, this is no different other than the fact that we get to explore and dive into a little bit of your past and understand your storyline of what led you through the journey of having something so hard and traumatizing happen in your life that led you then to seek therapy. And then some of the benefits that came from you seeking therapy, and maybe a little bit of hope that we can give to the audience and to the listeners and the viewers of how to seek therapy, and maybe through your experiences might inspire someone on the other side of the camera today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Rachel, I just have to say, I am so excited to hear your story. I think in therapy and Therapist Table Talk, we often talk about the issues and how we're approaching them and what that looks like for people. We often don't get to hear the backstories of how people got to where they are and what those really big changes and how therapy really helped.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be beautiful.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to get to share with you. And I'm sure you'll have questions along the way. So
Absolutely.
please interrupt me and chime in with anywhere we can kind of fill in some gaps, things you're more
Absolutely.
curious about. So do you want me to jump into it?
Yeah, let's
Okay,
jump into it.
let's do it.
Tell us your story, Rachel Marie.
So my story didn't necessarily begin with me. As you're both very familiar with, oftentimes childhood trauma begins as a multi-generational process. So I actually come from a line of women who suffer with a lot of childhood traumas in their lives. As far as I know, there are 5 generations before me of women who did not experience motherhood from their own mothers. All of their mothers passed away when they were really young. 12 years old was the longest life before my own mother. So the experience of being able to learn how to mother your child was not really in existence for many of the women that came before me. And I think that it led to a lot of challenges for my own mother in figuring out, how do I do this thing that I didn't get to have exampled for me? Her mother died when she was 3 years old. So I really feel like it's necessary for me to honor those women who went through such great challenge before I did. Because for me, it's even more kind of a tribute to what I've been able to accomplish by getting where I'm at today. So my mom, her mom died when she was 3, as I said, and she suffered with mental illness, and she is actually a lesbian. So she was in a relationship throughout my life with another female partner who also suffered with mental illness. They had very different challenges, and it made for a really complicated environment that I was being raised in. I spent a lot of time in my home in isolation in my bedroom. Part of that was because it was self-selected. It was safer, and the environment was more peaceful if I was alone with my door shut. But as an only child, it felt like extreme isolation. It was really challenging to go by myself, and I have very few memories of experiencing play with anyone prior to like 2nd grade. Which is kind of fundamental for children's development.
Right.
So it did have an impact on me. I was really grateful that I had the opportunity to leave the house on the weekends oftentimes and get to go to school. It was a really safe, fun, exciting place for me where I was like, wow, there's people.
Right.
Yeah, especially with you being so social.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I went through my childhood years very alone, and the environment included a lot of yelling, a lot of verbal abuse. There was a lot of gaslighting and emotional challenges that took place, and not a lot of connection for me. Unfortunately, my mom's way of dealing with so much of her own challenges was that something would come up and there would be conflict in the home, and she needed to feel like she could separate herself from it, so she would leave. Which meant that I was on my own by myself with a care provider that wasn't very comfortable in the presence of others, and was not warm and didn't really possess the ability to show kindness or affection. So it was really hard. By the time that I was 15, so my mom would leave the home very frequently. She would pack up all of our things and say, Rachel, we're out of here. We deserve better than this. We shouldn't be treated this way. No one should ever talk to us the way that this is going down. And so we would pack up, and I would get all excited like, oh, Mom and I are just going to go on an adventure together. We'd get in the car. Sometimes we would only be in the car for about 3 hours and parked in a parking lot somewhere, and she'd say, I have to go to work tomorrow. Like, this isn't going to work. And so we would go back. And so at least once a year throughout my entire life and my whole upbringing, we would leave. Now, when I was about 14 years old, my mom left, and we were gone for a couple of months. We got our own apartment. So she was kind of making steps where she was starting to try to figure out how to leave and mean it and not come back to an addictive relationship and addictive tendencies. And I was gaining a little bit more hope, thinking, okay, we're really going to be able to like do this. And I'm getting older, so I could help, and I could be a cheerleader, and we can make this happen. And she went back. So this happened again one time when I was, for kind of like the final like straw that broke the camel's back. I was 15 years old. We had an apartment. We had been there for 3 months. It was during the summer break in between me going from junior high to high school. It was a pretty pivotal part of my life and the shaping of who I was going to become. And when we left, I felt so much hope. I felt like my mom and I were connecting together, and it was an opportunity to experience freedom. I could talk on the phone. I could have people over to our house. That was allowed.
Right.
I was allowed to go to friends' houses, and I didn't necessarily have to ask permission if I just said where I was going. So I felt this sense of freedom that was so amazing. It was such a breath of fresh air. And when I felt that, it just empowered me with so much excitement. I was like, Mom, you have to promise me that we are never going back, ever. Like, if you go back, I won't go back with you. And she was like, okay, I promise. And then one day she came to me and she said, Rachel, you need to pack your things. And I was pretty devastated. It was a really, really hard day, as you can imagine. And we actually had a little bit of an altercation that kind of unfolded because I was ready to just storm past her and be like, well, you can do whatever you want. I'm leaving with a friend. I'm not dealing with this. And she thought, well, if you think that's what you're going to do, I'm going to have to call the police. Like, you're not doing what I asked you to do right now. So you need to pack your bags. And that was scary because as a child, I didn't know what my rights were. I didn't know what was allowed. And police officers came and they talked to me about going to juvenile hall. And I was thinking, I've never broken a law. I don't even know what that would look like. And this is scary. And I didn't feel like I had any choices. So
At what age were you on this?
I was 15.
Okay, so you were still 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we went, and I didn't necessarily go willingly, but I didn't know what options that I had. And we went with promises of things will be better this time and it will be different and I'll be nicer, this kind of stuff, And one of the parts that was really challenging about my upbringing is that whenever I did something that was sort of like a little disobedient or a little outside of the parameters, if I came home from school 10 minutes later than it was supposed to take me to walk straight home from school, there was a punishment. And 9 times out of 10, that punishment was no phone, no TV, no leaving your room. You don't come out of your room unless it's just to do the dishes or eat. And so it was really isolating. And the first time that it happened, I think what happened is that I didn't do the dishes exactly correctly. I put a bowl away in the wrong place, I'm pretty sure. And so the verbal abuse kind of ensued, you're worthless, you're lazy, I can't believe that you didn't do this, and now you're lying about it, really? And so the consequence was enforced that, hey, guess what? You won't be leaving this weekend for that big fun thing that you wanted to go do with friends. And I just felt this weight of I can't live under this kind of pressure anymore, and I'm breaking inside. I recognized that I had been moving down a path of trying to figure out how to gain a sense of ownership over my life and my choices and how I used my agency. And the light inside of me was dimming very significantly, and I was really afraid of what I was capable of under that kind of restraint. I recognized that I had made some promises to myself about what I wanted to do with my own chastity and what goals that I had for myself. And little by little over that 6-month time period, I had sacrificed a lot of my own personal standards in effort to try to be around people.
Find that connection you weren't getting at home.
I was so desperate. And in the desperation of the moment, I decided the only thing that I could do to survive this type of environment was that I had to leave. And I ran to my room and packed a bag as fast as anyone could ever pack a bag. I had slippers on my feet. I grabbed my gym bag, filled it up with some changes of clothes, and I ran for my life. It was dark outside, and I ran over a mile to get to an older boyfriend's house where I thought I might be able to stay for a bit. And as I made that run, I was pretty terrified. I was scared, thinking I might not be safe running in the middle of the night, and it's dark, and it's really cold, and I don't know where I'm going to go and what's going to happen to me. So it was pretty scary, but I knew that I needed to survive, and I was dying in the environment I was coming from. So I left, and I was in a relationship that was pretty unhealthy with this boyfriend, and I didn't really know how I was going to be able to get myself to school. I didn't know how I was going to be able to eat. I was working on trying to attend school, but it became less of a priority during that time period. And so, long story short, I unintentionally dropped out of high school and found myself recognizing like, oh, this isn't quite what I wanted for myself and for my own journey. I got a call that some would say was like the call of a lifetime. For me, it feels like it was just sort of another lifetime So it's weird for me to say, but I did get a call from a modeling agency, and they wanted to send me overseas to Italy for a year. Wow. I was really excited about the call, but then I asked what happens with school, and the agent on the other end of the line said, well, all we need you to do is just drop out of school and you can get your GED later. And when I heard those words, for me, instantly I was like, what? A GED? That means I would have to take a test and I would have to pass it. And I know I don't test well. And every person in my life that I feel like could have encouraged me, that could have made a big impact of support for me, has kind of given me messages that I'm going to fail.
Right.
I'm not someone who would succeed, and I'm not going to make it. And I would be a high school dropout. And that I'm not going to amount to much of anything. When she said you have to get your GED, just everything clicked for me. It was a light bulb moment, and I thought, wait a second, I'm pretty much dropped out of school right now. This can't happen. And so I just said to her, what if I work really hard on just graduating really quickly? Could we make that work? And she said, give me a call. Like, we'll see if we can make that work. And I just thought, wishful thinking, okay, this is going to turn out great. I'm just going to quickly graduate and I'll give her a call in like 6 months. No problem. Even though it's only 10th grade and I've missed almost all of it, I'm going to work it out. It's okay. So I figured out what I was going to do. I went and met with different high school counselors, and they said, hey, tell us what you're in here for. And I told them I wanted to graduate early. They said, you're not even going to graduate on time, let alone graduate early. Like, what are you thinking? And I was really resourceful, and I told them, what if I do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to make this happen? And it was really an amazing part of my life because I figured out what I was capable of. Right. And what perseverance and dedication and hard work and resourcefulness could get me. And I was able to graduate early. I graduated a year early, and I called up that modeling agency. And what was funny is at that point they kind of said, we've given your spot away. And I really didn't even care because I had transformed into a totally different person that believed in myself in a totally different way. And it was okay with me. So that was a really fun part. And like I say, there's different steps that were taking place throughout all of this and resources that were really awesome that we'll kind of maybe be able to get into in a minute. But at the end of this, by the time that I was 17 years old, I was working full-time in a very professional environment, and I had the opportunity to kind of look at my life and see what was going on. I'd cut out a lot of bad things from my life, and I was kind of looking for something good. And I had the opportunity to be invited to a church event, and I previously didn't really have religion in my life. It wasn't really a part of my upbringing, and everything that I was hearing, I listened to a conference session from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and there were messages that were being shared on that television program that I heard, and when I heard them, my heart just started to sing. I was feeling like everything they're saying is what I felt my whole life, and if that's a thing, I want to be a part of it. I wanted to meet with the missionaries that I didn't even know what they were called. I told my friend, can we call those guys to give us those like talk thingies?
The guys that walk around the suits.
Yes, exactly. And she's like, you mean the missionaries? So here in Utah, that's like kind of common. They walk around all the time, and I had seen them go from door to door. I didn't really know what was going on, but I was like, I think I want that. Because whatever was going on that I was hearing about from that television program, I really liked what I was hearing. Well, as soon as I started meeting with them and they talked to me about a Heavenly Father and a Jesus Christ that had like made sacrifices for me and knew me, I was all in. So not to say that religion is everybody's path to continuing on their path of healing and success, but for me, it really was like a very important part of the puzzle that made so much sense for me and brought me so much hope, and it filled me with so much reward that it was a really important part of the next part of my journey, which was leading me to find a significant other. I was looking for a boyfriend that might be kind of a gentleman. I thought, what would it be like if I wasn't dating a player who was super good looking and going from girl to girl, but somebody who was willing to open a door for me and who just saw me as really special and wanted to like just be kind and treat me really good and positively because of all that I am on the inside that had nothing to do with my appearance or status in any way, I thought, what would that be like? And
this was probably not a type of relationship you would ever had role model for you.
No,
or
never.
even had very much connection.
I wasn't even sure if it was real. Like I was
it was a
like,
Hallmark movie.
Yeah. I'm like, is it possible possible that there could be a guy like that? I do not know. But.
The writers are going to be giving me a call for the new Hallmark movie called Rachel Marie's Life.
Or they're going to give us a call. We're going to be sued for copyright for talking about their...
Oops, sorry. We didn't
someone else's story that they think that we're making up.
Yeah, so it was kind of crazy, but I was looking for a gentleman, and within just a couple of days of kind of having this really special prayer experience that I had, I went to a dance place where I was frequenting, and this wonderful man came up to me, and he was like, hey, I just wanted to tell you thank you because I had a really nice time tonight, and it was nice getting to dance with you the ones. And he turned and started to walk away, and I was like, wait! Do you want to take me out on a date sometime?
I love this!
And I was like, that was such a gentlemanly thing to do. You know, like, he didn't want anything out of it. He just wanted to say thank you.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, he just opened the door for you, didn't he?
He did! He opened
Yes.
the door, and we never dated anybody else after that. And we've been married for 20 years.
Congratulations. That is amazing.
It is absolutely amazing. The thing that makes me most excited about it is that I understand that statistically, to be married for 20 years to the same person and have the stability that I have in my life, and to have just the joy that I'm able to bring in every day, regardless of how many challenges I still face. Like, I have bad days.
Right.
But I look at my life as a whole, and I just think it is an absolute miracle. And I have married a gentleman, and they do exist. So,
And how old were you at that point when you met him?
When I met him, I was 18. And I wanted to get married really quickly. I had lived on my own because it was 15 when I left. It'd been 4 years, and I was wanting to share my life with somebody. I wanted a committed relationship. And fortunately, he didn't get too scared away when I asked him if he wanted to move forward pretty quickly, too. It was after the second date, I was like, he's legit and he's real, and I didn't know this was even a thing. So definitely I have to make sure he doesn't get away if he's interested.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You really did overcome all of the odds in a lot of
ways.
Right. The age piece, how long you've been together just based on statistics, right?
Yeah.
Marriages are hard.
Absolutely.
And you're coming from a place of having no role model,
Absolutely.
nothing to base your relationship off of. You just had to figure
What
it
I
out.
love about your bringing this up is, can I just say, when you take, you know this, I know you know this, but it's just one of those things you kind of have to say. When you take somebody that's had this kind of a lifestyle over here and been brought up in all of this, and then you marry somebody who's had a lifestyle way over on the other end of the spectrum, it is hard to figure out how to problem solve together, how to understand the other person's way of thinking and reacting. It is hard.
Yeah.
We fought for our marriage one day at a time for probably the first 10 years of our marriage. The idea of, are we going to make it, was constantly right under our noses, because we had a mountain to climb to figure out how to problem solve together, how to understand, how to be less reactive. Like, hard doesn't really begin to say. And the reward to be able to say that we found ways to figure out tools to get where we are, that is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And I love this. Celeste, there's a part of me right now where I'm like, let's talk about the troubled teens and like some of the statistical findings of actually her finding where she ended up getting to go, where we know what it takes to find some of those, what we need to watch for in troubled teens or in at-risk youth. And you work in a program right now where you're constantly finding them and bringing them into the program.
Right.
Yeah. And what you're finding, there was some pivotal moments in her choices that she made along that pathway.
Absolutely.
Where I think with us working with troubled teens, we can say, whoa, that was a big monumental life. Like, she was at a pivotal point where she could have went left or right, and she went
absolutely.
right. And so let's just kind of name those out loud really fast of what we kind of saw.
I love this. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Please do it.
And Rachel, if you want to jump in with us here.
Totally.
Yeah. What are some things that you notice and you see of a lot of at-risk youth that come into your place?
Well, I think one of the biggest pieces that I'm hearing from you is you really found that resilience, and you knew kind of what you wanted with your life, even though you never really had that experience.
She never knew what she wanted, but kind of knew what she
But
wanted. Like,
right.
she had no idea what she wanted, but she knew.
That life-changing phone call about the modeling where you were like, I have pretty much dropped out of school, right? You buckled down and you were very resourceful, right? And something that I see with a lot of teens is they don't have that insight, and not to any fault of their own, but because they haven't had any of those experiences, right? And so in order for them to get to a place that you're at now, to find that joy, to find that happiness, they have to have people in their life that notice.
Yes.
People in their life that can see that they're struggling and really put in the effort to help them find those resources that you somehow were able to put together on your own.
Yeah.
Right?
I would love to kind of add something to that.
Yeah.
I know from my own working with youth as well, that support system is so extremely key to the resilience part of it. And it is a little bit mind-boggling to me when I look back at the support systems that I had. There were so few and far between. Like, they almost didn't really exist for me.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is that at just the right time, there were just the tiniest little nuggets. And I just wanted to point out, at that time in my life where I was able to identify this necessity for change, I got myself enrolled in all this school. I ended up enrolling for 3 schools at once. But at one of the schools, I qualified to take one of the classes to get an elective course, and it was an at-risk kiddos class. And Amazing. It was an opportunity to learn life skills and identify challenging things that might be going on in our lives, to gain the resilience training on how to identify what I can do to change the trajectory. So even though I was already kind of on a path of changing my own trajectory, I was given tools because of a class like that.
That was what you needed.
That made a huge difference. So I just wanted to kind of point that out.
No, I love that.
I didn't have a lot, but I had one class that without that, I don't know, even though I was doing so many things and it was kind of happening, I just don't know if I could have ended up here without that class.
Yeah.
And that class, just to jump ahead a little bit, and then we're going to come back, but that class is exactly what Shine SLC is all about. That one class is what you want to take forward and what you're taking into the school systems, or hopefully taking into the school systems, and helping these at-risk youth to obtain that level of understanding that really saved you. I think that there's a couple of things here. First of all, Celeste, I'm kind of curious because I think that with Rachel, I noticed a couple of things that really were like monumental for her. I noticed that she had an awareness, like a self-awareness of like stuff that she wanted to obtain for herself, which we talked about when we hear. But not only that, but it was also an awareness of the future, which we know with working with a lot of teens, it can be very struggling to find.
That idea of delayed gratification and understanding if I do this now, I'll have this later. Their brains often are not developed in that way for them to be able to see that far ahead. And I think your comment about the class, right? I think that proves that point, that for some of these kiddos, it's those little things that we as adults have a responsibility to notice and to make some sort of effort to help them. Because that class might have been really little in the grand scheme of things, but that was
monumental.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we are responsible to help kiddos when we're seeing those struggles, when we're seeing little signs that there's something going wrong, maybe at home or in their own life or mental health wise. Even just being that person that just opening up the door. Like, hey, I'm here for you to talk to me.
Yeah. And let me share with you some of the traps that you're falling into as a teenager, right? Because there are some traps, like you feeling this way could get you this pivotal point, or it could take you on a really downward slope down this way. And so I think that futuristic thinking of understanding where we are and where we want to go is like crucial. And that's what I'm hearing that you had, which is actually quite a gift to have as a young child who probably was never taught to have that, and to actually have that. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So some monumental things here. Plus, you can feel like the exuberance for life. Can you feel that?
Oh,
like,
absolutely. Absolutely.
The way she talks passionately and the tone in her voice of like life and how awesome it is. Yeah, so it's like really cool to see that. And I think that along the way, without being really heard, seen, validated, and understood, which is what we know most teens need in their critical development, if we want to talk about Eric Erickson and his stages of development, like it is pivotal that they have those people in their life, especially at the age of 15, where you kind of pull away from parents naturally anyway and reach out towards your peers and people around you that really relate to you. And if you are given those people in your life that you relate with, that tend to have a different aspect of where they want to go for their life, and you go along with that, it could take you down a different route.
Yeah.
Right? And so
I actually really love that you're pointing that out, because I feel like, in spite of the fact I didn't have a lot of adults support, I found ways to surround myself by people, like, so through junior high, 7th and 8th grade, I was surrounding myself by a really rough crowd. And they were coming from a really, really rough homes that had their own sets of challenges that were equally as hard and in some ways even more challenging. And I was able to identify, this is a rough crowd. And I think that it's not quite, I can kind of see if they act like their parents and they get what their parents have and they keep treating me this way, it's not really happiness.
Yeah.
And I had an opportunity to hang out with a different friend group. And in that friend group, I saw that they were all coming from homes that seemed like they were really put together. There was a lot of stability, it looking like, from the outside. The kiddos were kind of happier, and they just had something that I knew nothing about that I was really intrigued by. It looked to me more like the Hallmark experience that they were getting to have. And I thought, how can I get some of that Hallmark experience for me? And so I actually did a friend group shift in the 9th grade. And that too was another opportunity for me to do the compare and contrast that is so important. And I saw, when I go into their homes, there's peace, there's kindness, there's respect. They have challenges, but the things that they're telling me are their challenges, I would take those hands down.
Right.
You call that a challenge?
Yeah.
Sign me up.
you're like, I'm worried about feeding myself and how I'm going to pay the bills and get feminine products at the store.
Right. Exactly.
And
so
the reality of that is you falling into that crowd and really finding those people that were so similar to you as far as background goes, and finding that was a rough crowd because of all the reasons you mentioned, everything that's been exemplified for them. That's pretty honestly predictable that's what you found, because we as humans tend to drift toward people that are similar to us in a lot of ways. Those are the people that can relate. Those are the people that are maybe tolerant of some of our mental health struggles because they're going through it themselves, right? And there's this fear of attaching to people that are different, that have these different experiences, because what if, right?
Yes.
What if I get rejected?
Yes.
And so it happens all the time. And we're going to see that, right? When you see a rough crowd and kids that are really struggling, those are the kids that they've drifted together because they have very similar experiences.
Yeah. In my book, I kind of have a little chapter that talks a little bit about this.
Oh, I love it.
And what I think is really beautiful to me, I have to give tribute to the influences that I had that were for good.
Yes, for sure.
I am so grateful that there were really good girls that were really kind and really nice, that came from really good homes, that were willing to give me a chance because they knew that I was hanging out with the rough crowd the year before. And they saw something enough in me to believe in me, to allow me the opportunity to hang out with them. And I did something in return. I made sure that when they told me something that they were uncomfortable with or that they preferred, maybe in relation to like my language that I would use or something in that nature, how I would conduct myself, I made sure I was respectful because I was being allowed to continue to be influenced by them.
Right.
And I just think it's important to kind of point out, for some of the girls that are having a little bit of a hard time, like, should I invite that girl in? I think it's really important to kind of recognize the boundaries of, like, is she willing to respect your boundaries? Is she willing to rise to the occasion if you allow her the opportunity? Because there are some girls out there who might be like me who will rise. and they just need someone to take a chance on them. And I am so grateful for the friends that took a chance on me.
Which is really, really awesome. I love this because in this, can you feel the self-awareness?
Oh, absolutely.
Like the self-awareness of like, I'm recognizing that I dove into this friend group. I feel this friend group. I recognize they are me in a lot of ways. But then also taking that turn to say, I'm valuable and I choose to have something different. And then the want and the movements that you took to have that something different and to reach out to those friends or allowing them, because sometimes it takes us allowing them to reach out to us, because sometimes they might reach out to us, but we might have our guards up or our walls and not allowing, and not allowing yourself to like have that or not feeling like you deserve it, right? I think even sometimes as adults, we get to that place where kindness happens to us and we're not really willing to allow the kindness to happen to us. And so the fact that you allowed it to happen and you allowed it to win in your life goes to show a ton of character building development there that is really quite phenomenal. So I think this is quite awesome. I want to take this, I don't know, Celeste, if you have any other things that you wanted to add to that before I move it in another direction.
No, I am good. And just threw my phone on the floor, which...
We are all human here. I stumbled over my words. Celeste is throwing her phone at us. And so, Rachel, what are you going to do? Just kidding.
It's your turn to embarrass yourself. Figure it out.
Just trying to keep playing cool here.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay, well, let's move it in another direction because what I want to say here is Rachel's story was hard. And the things that she's going through, I think sometimes the listeners back or the viewers are watching this and hearing this and going, oh, my life is just nothing like that, you know, and what she had to go through was so hard and terrible. And oh my gosh, and they might even be beating themselves up a little bit. Like, I have this little simple thing that I'm dealing with and that is so insignificant and not worthy of like my time and feeling bad for myself. Or they might even be saying like her stuff that she's going through is monumental and huge, and what I'm going through is not good enough. You know, it's not valuable enough to like gain the help that I need, or I shouldn't really put it on a place of like, oh yes, Rachel needs therapy because of what she had, but I don't. Maybe I don't need to. And so I think that this is the point of where I want to dive into this just a little bit, because I want people to recognize that their stories are theirs. And what they're going through is monumental for them. And sometimes I think we as people that have big things that happen to us always look at the people that have something bigger happen to us and say mine isn't enough to like value a response or therapy or whatever it is. And we kind of throw it under the bus or we hide it or make it not as significant. And so I just want to do a quick plug to our viewers and our listeners to say like, yes, what Rachel had to go through was really difficult and hard, but you are a valuable person too. And the things that you're going through are just as hard, just in a different way for you. And so this is the pivotal point of where I want to talk about some of the things that you learned. Rachel went to therapy and she gained some tips and tricks along the way, which was really cool. And so I want to dive into that a little bit of like, what gave you that first step to receive help? And I think that this is really important because in my own office, and I think Celeste, you probably have a couple stories about this too, is I've had people that will come into my office and they say, yay, I finally made it. Like, this is exciting. I walked through your doors and I'm here. And I'm like, yes, you made it. And I didn't go through that struggle with them, right? So I don't know what it took them to get through my doors. But sometimes I'll ask, and like one client was like, I called 15 times. Like, I called 15 times. I picked up the phone, I dialed your number, and I hung up before I actually one day actually took it. And she's like, and then a therapist before you, I called, I walked into her door and I left. And so I want to say like, this is a pivotal moment of scariness to actually reach out and get the help that you need.
I actually had a similar experience. I had received therapy. So for me, therapy was kind of like stepping stones. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they'll continue to be stepping stones throughout my life. And perhaps they'll come in increments where sometimes it's like, you know, they're closer together, and then times there's a big space, and then like, okay, then just like on a regular basis, sort of evenly toned. Mm-hmm. So we're all in different seasons and different parts of our life where we might need some extra tools, right? For me, I think there were adults in my life that saw some risk factors really early on. Right. So I kind of always had therapy in the back of like my life to some level. I can remember being a second grader and meeting with the school counselor regularly, not really understanding what that was. Or like why. I just thought it was like, well, I'm supposed to go to this teacher and I'm supposed to go to that teacher, and this is just like kind of like one of the teachers that I'm just supposed to go to and talk to. So it was sort of always there. But I did have a time period for me where I was struggling with, am I ready to take the step to reach out for therapy at this time? I wasn't currently enrolled in therapy, and I was going through an extremely challenging time. So I'd like to kind of visit with you a little bit about that.
I love it. Let's do it.
So for me, I was going through, I just had my first child, and he was probably 6 months old, and I could tell something was wrong. I didn't really know how to identify it, but I felt like I needed to get some tools under my belt, and it was time to call the therapist. And I was really scared. I was really scared because I didn't know I was experiencing postpartum depression, but I knew that I was experiencing thoughts that were coming into my mind on a regular basis that I didn't have the ability to stop. And now I know that there's a name for that. and that's been really, really helpful throughout all of my processes to kind of understand how to identify the different things that I experience. But
And I think that's one of the parts that makes seeking out therapy so scary is we don't have a name for it. We can't pinpoint like, oh, this is what's happening, so I should go to therapy because I'm experiencing X, Y, or Z. It's just like I feel like there's something wrong with me, but I don't know what. And it's scary to go tell someone like, there's something wrong with me, but I don't know what.
Yeah. Well, and I'm recognizing there's some tips. There's some things in here that is becoming incongruent with how I want to live my life.
Right.
Like I'm recognizing I'm not being able to function in daily life. And I'm looking around me, which we should never do, but we do anyway. But I'm looking around me and everyone looks functional, and I know that I'm crying all day long, and so like definitely some of those tips and tricks can get us in the door.
Yeah.
I was really scared to make the call because in my mind I was thinking, what will happen if I share some of the scary things that are happening in my mind that I don't feel like I have control over? If I tell a therapist that, I don't know what happens next. Would they just think that I'm like a bad mom and call DCFS and get my kids taken from me? I think I'm a good mom and I don't want to lose my kids. And I was terrified to make the call. And even once I was in front of my therapist, those first couple of visits, I was thinking, how do I filter what I'm going to say and share so that she doesn't take my kids? Because I don't know what's right to say and wrong to say, where there's like a line to not cross so that I don't all of a sudden it's like bad mom. We're putting the stamp right on her forehead. Everybody's going to know you're a bad mom.
And the shame of it.
You don't get to be a mom anymore. We're taking your kids. I was really, really afraid of that. And so what was really, really, really awesome to kind of like give the other side of what happened with that, because I was so afraid to make the call. And I'm so glad that I did, because in the process of that, I was able to get a really wonderful tidbit of information from my therapist. She had talked to me about the idea that it was really helpful for me to see those thoughts that were coming into my mind and just recognize, listen, Rach, you have gone through a lot of past trauma. You have what's called complex PTSD, and your brain is hardwired to try to protect you, to be able to avoid things that would be unsafe. And so it gives you alarm, 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 so that you will know how to keep safe. And as a mom, that alarm is going off on hyper mode to make sure that you will be a good mom. And so it's just saying, make sure you remember to buckle them in. Make sure you remember to buckle them in. Make sure you remember, and just keeps doing the what if you forgot. And so I better give you the message again, just in case you forgot. And then the what if you forget because you forgot. And so we're just going to keep doing it like on hyper overdrive because we're really trying to make sure you're going to be a good mom. Mm-hmm. And it's not because you're not going to be a good mom. It's just because we don't know how to turn that alarm off.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so when I heard that, it really, really, really empowered me, because I recognized I don't have to be scared of those thoughts, because I thought, well, what if that means if I have that thought that I'm going to actually do it? I'm going to actually forget to buckle my kid in. And it was so empowering to find out, oh, that just means I'm extra not going to forget, because I got a hyperactive brain that tells me.
Yes, right.
And it made me put a positive spin on something that I was really scared of, to kind of feel like I have superpowers. I'm extra going to be good. It's going to be okay.
Yes.
Right.
I love that. And that's one of the things as a therapist. And I know that we've both probably worked with postpartum clients that come in and I know right when they come in and they say that they've had a baby recently, I always dive into, then there might be some terrifying thoughts that are coming in that are possibly, and I go into that for them so it opens the door for that conversation so they know. And if you don't,
offer those moms, what a nice thing you're doing.
And if you do have those thoughts, it is totally okay. And I'm going to tell you why, and we kind of dive into that, and we'll probably have another therapist table talk on actually postpartum depression or postpartum depression. But here's the thing is that I always find is I always ask them, but do you want to? Do you want to do that? When you think of that thought or you have that vision that comes in your mind, do you want to? And that's the key right there. And if you say no to that, then we're good. And then it's just a warning system that's saying you're just scared of being a bad mom.
Right.
And therefore,
or failing,
or you're failing.
Not being just enough as a person.
Yes, or the scary of like, what if I'm doing this wrong? Because as we all know, it was your first baby. It was my first baby too. I had an experience with it. Like we all have this where it can come in. And if it does, that's all it means is that possibly we're just fearful and scared. But if the day comes when we do say, what if I'm scared that I might say I am? Well,
like
then
I want to do that action. Kind of
yeah.
Well, what if?
And then I say, well, you just put it in the what if, so it's not.
Right.
If you put in the what if, it's not.
And I do want to clarify just for a moment for those that aren't super familiar with postpartum depression. For you, the thoughts showed up as just like this intrusive over and over, what if I don't buckle them in? What if I don't buckle them in? Right? And I also want to kind of normalize that for a lot of moms experiencing postpartum depression, those thoughts might be a lot darker.
Yes.
And those are the thoughts that you are trying to open up the door for. Like there might be some really dark thoughts coming up. Can you tell me maybe what you're thinking? Because that is such a shame-producing experience, and I've had so many new moms just so scared to tell me what was actually going through their mind because it feels bad and wrong and like you're a terrible person.
Yes.
And the reality is it's your body trying to protect itself. And it goes back to that question of like, but do you want to?
And if we do get to that place where they can answer that question and it is yes,
right,
then that's when I say, call a friend, call a neighbor, call somebody,
which again is so
reach out to
empowering,
me.
Because what you're saying is that if I'm a mom and I tell you that thing, you're not saying, okay, well, now this is where I call DCF.
Yeah.
It's like what you're saying is, so here's a tool of what happens. And all of a sudden the scary is gone. Yes. It's not that if I do tell you, you're going to take my kids. It's if I do tell you, you're going to give me tools. Like, oh, I call a friend. Okay, I can do that. That's not scary. Yes. Oh, I need to get the babysitter over so I can take a break. Oh, I need to make sure I get a full night's sleep because sleep is going to make a big impact.
Yes, overwhelming feelings are big on postpartum.
I just love that you're saying that because we're giving that empowerment back to the moms to say like, listen, your brain's going to make you think that it's not safe to share, but getting those tools, it helps you to overcome. It gives you the hope. It says it's not going to be like this forever.
Yeah,
You're going to work through this.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And we as therapists like to think that we are magical and have all the superpowers.
We're perfect in every way. It's the Mary Poppins
syndrome.
We've
got it all figured out, but not at all the case. And the reality is I tell my clients all the time, like, I can't read your mind, right? As much as I sometimes want to and sometimes don't, I can't read your mind. So if you don't tell me what's happening for you, and I know that it's scary to open up and really share those thoughts, I can't help you with those tools and planning and figuring out how to move forward from this.
Exactly. That is such a beautiful thing. And I think this is so monumental and awesome. Would it be okay if we dive into a couple of things that you did learn and a couple of things, let's just hit on a few of them really fast.
Yes.
So we can like spend some time on your nonprofit because that's really the excitement.
I'm dying to get to that part.
Yes.
Okay. Well, for me, I loved so many things about therapy because every one of them was a stepping stone for me to be able to get to the healing that I have now. And I'm sorry I get a little choked up. I'm so grateful that I'm not stuck in the place I was at when I didn't have the tools.
Right.
It's just miraculous to me to get to see when you look back where you can get to. when I would go to therapy, I would walk into every therapy appointment with a little bit of like a self-inflicted homework assignment. So I would walk in thinking like, this is what I'm struggling with most. And so I'm going to try to figure out something to make that easier for me because I can't do it. I would feel desperate enough that it was like, I need this fixed. And if it can only be fixed through something that I do, then what can I do? Right?
Right.
And so I remember coming from one of my therapy appointments during the time that I was going through some really rough, it was actually after baby number 2, because it doesn't only happen after baby number 1.
Right.
So I had it again, baby number 2, and it was even harder. And I was going through a really rough time, and I was feeling a lot of reactivity, which I didn't know there was a name for that at the time. So what that meant was I was having feelings that were kind of explosive and with a lot of anger. I would feel overwhelmed about things, and then my mouth would just, what I call like word vomit. And I would just say all the anger right through my mouth. And so I shared that with my therapist, and I was like, don't want to do this because I'm experiencing a lot of self-hatred. I hate that I'm mean when I'm mad or when I'm overwhelmed. I do not want to be that person. I don't want to treat the people that I love this way. And it made me feel really bad about myself that I wasn't thinking through what I was saying before I was saying things to my loved ones.
Yeah.
So the assignment that I got, this is one of the tools that I loved most, was I want you to go home, and the next time that you feel like you're starting to go into what she used the word autopilot. So it was like, you're not thinking and you're steering the car and being all engaged. It's just like, it's on autopilot. It's just happening all on its own.
I feel this way and I do this thing, and it just happens because I know that it just happens.
And and I wasn't in control of what I was saying. And so she said, okay, the next time you feel like that happens, I want you to pause and try to do a scan on your body of awareness and just see, what were you feeling right before you said those explosive words? Like, what was your heart tone like? What was your breath like? How did your hands feel? Did they get clammy, tingly? What was it for you? Because if you can identify that, then you're going to be able to have a little bit of a heads up if you can try to see it coming. Like, oh, my heart's starting to pound, here it comes. And then I can pump the brakes before the autopilot turns on.
Yeah.
And when she taught me how to do that, well, I'll tell you, at first I went home from that appointment and I exploded about 4 times before I remembered I was supposed to think of what I was doing when that happened.
Those human qualities
Oh,
that come out.
So it took a lot of effort on my part, and it was important enough to me to keep putting in the effort because I wanted to feel better about how I was treating others.
Right.
So I kept at it so that at some point before I met with her again, I was going to be able to give her a report. Like, okay, I found out. Inside of my body, I take a really big, deep breath right before I go, mean word, mean word, mean word. And so I was able to recognize, if I can recognize when that big breath happens and then blow it out, I get to have the control of what I think before I speak comes out of my mouth. And that was really empowering for me. So I loved the process of learning that tool, and it's still one that I work to keep as an active part of my repertoire of coping to this day, even though I learned that 16 years ago.
It's that 1.5 second response system that we always get.
Right,
we
right.
think and we react within 1.5 seconds. And so you, by taking a big deep breath, you push it to like maybe 5 seconds. And that 5 seconds adds in possibly a rational thought.
Right. Well, and I'm
Gives you a
curious,
gift.
in your experience for everybody watching or listening, how easy was that to implement that tool?
Well, like I said, it took over 4 times of exploding before I could figure out what do I do and what do I feel inside my body. And then to figure out, now that I know I take a deep breath, what am I going to do about it?
Right. Right.
And then, how many times am I going to fail before I have the first time where I'm able to blow it out?
Do it.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's like any new skill. It takes practice.
It's so hard.
And at first, when you're practicing a brand new thing, you're going to fail a lot more than you're going to succeed.
Yes.
And so it's a lot of determination of how strong is your willpower? How much does this matter to you? How much are you vested in your own ability to, I will improve. I refuse. And I think this is kind of like, we talk a little bit about some of the gifts that I've been given. But I feel really, really grateful. One of the things that has gotten me where I'm at, first and foremost, is this gift that I call the ability to stand up tall on the inside. And it's no matter what's being said about me, no matter whether it's for myself, because oftentimes the negative talk just comes straight from ourselves, right? Or it's coming from somewhere external. It's the ability to say, I matter more than that. I am valuable. I can do this. And how strong is my desire to believe that? Enough to say it doesn't matter how many times that I fail and how embarrassed I am and how much shame that I have that I yelled at my kids again or I said something so mean to my husband who I love, who's my gentleman. But I come from a lot of reactivity. And when I don't feel like I have control, it's so easy to just autopilot really mean words to protect myself.
Right.
And I don't want that to be my story. So I continue to be okay with failure, and I continue to celebrate guess what? This time I won. This time I took the deep breath. This time I did a little bit better. I stopped myself midway through. I recognized I was doing this, and then I hit the brakes and thought, it's not important for us to fight. It's okay if I'm wrong. I don't want to fight.
Wow.
So
that is really cool. I love that.
It really is, for you, this acceptance of your own humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail. I'm going to try again, and I'm going to fail. And I have to recognize that when I get discouraged and feeling like I can't do this isn't going to work, I'm going to try and fail again until I start to see those pieces of light.
What I think is beautiful about hearing you say that too is it's not specific to me.
No.
It doesn't matter. I feel like every human has something big that we're working on that's making life hard right now, today.
Yes.
And whatever it is, do I have the ability to say, I'm going to fail, it's okay. And I'm going to keep trying, and I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah, because tomorrow I might be a little better than I was yesterday.
Yes.
And that's the piece that we have to stay focused on, and that's the piece that can keep us going, which I think is so incredible. And I'm so grateful for you sharing that story with us. And that tool is incredible. And I know there's a couple of things here I want to jot out that Rachel and I discussed a little bit beforehand before coming into this podcast video. Is she puts in a silver lining every single day, and that is so beautiful, which adds in joy and also gratitude. And I thought that was phenomenal. She self-gives a ton, as you can hear her, which is a form of self-confidence, is to be able to celebrate those moments, which you talked about. And we'll dive into self-confidence on another podcast. But the fact that you allow yourself to have that, it's the intuitive thinking, it's the empowerment, it's naming the emotion and the disorder and allowing it to be healed, And it's also not hyper-focusing on the little things and recognizing the ability to let go. And I think that right there is so beautiful. I'm so grateful that like you are so phenomenal, and inspirational to like everybody. If you have an event or something that you need to have Rachel Marie come and speak at, you can look at, is it Rachel Marie Talks?
Rachel Marie Speaks.
Rachel Marie Speaks. Same word, different word.
Yeah, we have a website.
Same word, different word.
Same word, different word. I love that you said like inspirational, because that's exactly what was going through my mind, right? Is you and your story are so inspirational.
Thank you.
And I love this conversation about connecting to therapy and how helpful that has been for you. And I want everyone to recognize that these are the resources we need. We do need to connect to therapy. And when you start out, you're not going to be the Rachel, right?
Me
You're
neither.
not going to find the silver lining in everything. You're not going to be this exemplary, pinnacle poster child of therapy. And that's okay, because everyone has to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
That is true. And if you want to help out, we do have a couple of resources here. We have the Shine SLC, which is really important to Rachel. And she has put together this amazing nonprofit. And I'm like actually really proud, because I got to be a part of this nonprofit, and I'm on one of the boards as a therapist there for the licensed clinical social worker. And she's really trying to motivate and excite those youth that were in a similar situation as her, those at-risk youth that are in the high school systems or middle school systems, to be able to find ways to incorporate different patterns and change different aspects of their life to give them the hope and the joy that they need in order to move forward. And so let's do like a quick little plug on your explaining and letting us know if people are out there right now and would like to help with your nonprofit. How do they get a hold of you? How do they find you? What are some things that you need right now that could be helpful?
Awesome. Well, we're definitely always in need of growing our board and people that are interested in volunteering a little bit of time to help us build our outreach and fundraising. That, of course, when you have a nonprofit organization, I don't think funds are ever there's always room for more.
Right.
My biggest vision with the nonprofit is to be able to provide services that I wish I had had. And so we do a couple of really special events, and we're always looking for donations to help make those events possible for the girls who attend. So, of course, it's spreading the word, it's sharing about it for other therapists that are listening. It's getting them involved. We're working on bringing our curriculum and our resources to the whole state of Utah, and potentially growing past that. So if people are interested, it's kind of going on our website and reaching out and finding out how you can bring some of the curriculum from Shine SLC into your school, your therapy practice, or highlighting the girls to give them a special event. To me, what's most important about sharing my story, and when I connect with others just like you, is being able to share, listen, I understand what these kiddos are going through because I lived it, but it's not very frequent that they get an opportunity to hear from somebody that came from what they're experiencing. Yes. And can say, I'm not just here to tell you, guess what, there's probably a way out and you might be able to succeed in life. I'm here to give you the tools and the path of what worked for me. Like, there are specific pivotal things that made the impact for me to get where I'm at. And if there are girls or boys, but we primarily do a lot of work with girls, but if they're interested in creating a brighter future for themselves, and they're interested in investing, like showing up to a class and doing what's asked of them, they can experience change. The path has already been made. You don't have to recreate the wheel. I figured it out, I wrote it all down, and I want to share it because I want other people to be able to experience the joy and stability I have been so blessed to be able to have in my life.
Wow, that is incredible. I think that is awesome. If you would like to donate or reach out to Shine SLC, we're going to put a link on our website as well. You can find it at shineslc.com. You can also find it on my website, which is affiliated with my bluebcs.com practice. And all of that will be linked over to Rachel Marie's website. We're super excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
And think that, you know, there's no way there's not somebody that is watching or listening that is not inspired by your story and what you came of it and how you got to where you were, where you're at with your nonprofit, and being able to pay it forward and help other people through the things that you learned so much about, which is pretty awesome. So thank you for joining us. Please show up next time. Come watch our podcast. We have a lot of really fun ones coming up. It's the Christmas holidays. And don't forget that you're going to be having family and friends that you're going to be having to visit with and see. And we have some special information about how to deal with those family members that maybe you don't really are not really excited about seeing. So
we all have those.
Yeah, we do all have those. And so join us next time. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.